Hi, everybody, and welcome to another podcast of The Real CD Show. My name is Chamberlain Burke.
And I'm Devlin Burke.
And this month, the last day of February, the end of February, we are going to wrap up our celebration and study of him by looking at the last four albums on their discography. If you've been with us, where am I going? Then you know that we've spent the month of February for 4 weeks studying the history of him and looking at some of we celebrated one of their albums, and then we've studied four of their discs that they released, and right now we are going to finish that up by looking at their last four albums. Starting in 2005, we have Dark Light, 2007, Venus Doom, 2010, Screamworks, which we talked about, but we'll touch on briefly, and in 2013, Tears on Tape. Devlin, so what can you tell us about anything new about him or about these four albums, favorites, how you came to know them, what you think about them?
So Dark Light was actually my introduction into him. The video for Rip Out the Wings of a Butterfly was played on heavy rotation on MTV. And this is one of the few albums of this album and Razorblade Romance were the two albums I believe in the US that like got traction. Like to promote this album, they actually went on Jimmy Kimmel. I remember that. I remember tuning in and staying up late and watching that and then falling asleep in school the next day and getting yelled at by teachers. But it was worth it. So this album is a little poppier. There's influences of Black Sabbath and U2, and there's work, and they were also influenced by a composer named
Badalamenti.
Yes. My favorite song on this album is Killing Loneliness. It's all about the desperation of trying to find loneliness, of you're lonely but you're with somebody and you're desperately trying to find a way to kill that loneliness. So Rip Out the Wings of a Butterfly, the song that turned me onto him.
You've mentioned that song several times.
Yeah, well, this is the first one, so I think to me that's kind of...
Right, yeah, because I think you mentioned it, that was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so we've got a quote here from Mr. Vallow. It says, it talks about how whether you are willing to destroy something beautiful to gain yourself some power. And when you fall in love to gain... And then later on... The title track, Dark Light, Vallow said, is the perfect song to describe what's going on the entire album. There's also something interesting going on here. In the song Behind the Crimson Door, Vallow is featured humming a poem by a Finnish author,
Timo Mukka.
Thank you. And so, again, when you're talking about literary references and things like that, there's also in The Night Side of Eden, which makes references to Divine Comedy by Dante
Alighieri.
Yes. So we do have that, and the band now on a B-side for a CD single, for one of the CD singles, they did cover the Ramones song Poison Heart, which
what was that like?
They made it darker. Poison Heart by the Ramones. It's very interesting because the song is all about the world's just full of bad people, and the chorus is like, I just want to walk right out of this world because everybody has a poison heart. No one really helps out the homeless and things like that. There's references to the homeless. So, and I think this kind of goes into, him has the logo, the heartogram. So that kind of ties into it. So that kind of ties into it. So we have Dark Light. Now we get into Venus Doom, which is probably the heaviest album in their catalog. Mr. Vallow had broken up with his fiancée, and he had a tattoo of her initial on his finger, and he changed the tattoo. So there's a lot of mourning the relationship, which I think most people do. There's not a lot of animosity, I feel, on this album. But, I mean, you have titles like Cyanide Sun and Dead Lover's Lane and Bleed Well.
Okay.
So they're angry. My favorite songs on this album are Cyanide Sun, Bleed Well, and Dead Lovers Lane, because those songs, I love the contrast. You have Lovers Lane, but wait, it's a Dead Lovers Lane, and Cyanide Sun is this beautiful sweeping uh ballad that and he mentioned, and he puts in the word labyrinth. We're lost in this labyrinth of lies.
Wow.
It's beautiful. And again, we have another reference to Timo Muka in the song. There's a little intro, which is the only interlude intro on this album in Song or Suicide. He recites this poem, but he does it to a guitar. So we do have that. So the longest song on this CD, this is the longest song in hymn's history, is "Sleepwalking Past Hope," which was partially inspired by his relationship with his fiance. It's about when do you really want to let go? When is the time? Because nobody can tell you the time to let go of a relationship or let go to yourself. Musically, it was inspired by "Loveless" by My Bloody Valentine and "Master of Puppets" by Metallica. And then there's this album, and he wrote it in Lapland. So there's a lot of references, and I remember he was talking about how it was described, how it was, he wanted each song to sound like it was the background to a movie. And I feel Cyanide Sun does that. Bleed Well is a great kick in the teeth song. Now Screamworks is the next album. This was the album I mentioned as my favorite. We already kind of touched on this one in that podcast,
a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago. So
Want to just move on?
yeah, I think so. If you want, you can check that one out. Now this is the final album. This is Tears on Tape. This one has instrumentals and interludes, which most hymn albums didn't. There was the little interlude on Venus Doom, but that was the only one on that. So this album we have instrumentals here. My favorite song on this album is Drawn and Quartered, which I know sounds menacing, but it's not. It's about, I'm willing to go through torture for you, and I want to know if you're willing to go through the same thing. At least that's how I've interpreted it. The singles off of this one were All Lips Go Blue, Tears on Tape, and Into the Night. Tears on Tape and Into the Night are two of my favorites, along with Drawn and Quartered. It's sad to see them end, but I guess him did all the songs that they felt they could do. We don't know if they will reunite or return, but
Is Mr. Vallow doing any solo work?
he is, but it's mostly in Finnish. He's got a group called Ville Vallo and the Agents, where they take pop songs and put them to Finnish lyrics. Like they released a single of the John Denver Annie song done in Finnish.
Oh, I heard that. That is spectacular. That is just beautiful.
And they've also done a Finnish version of the Dusty Springfield song "I Only Want to Be With You."
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
we have to check that out.
So it's mostly Finnish music. It's again Finnish love songs. It's a little lighter, not as gloomy, not as
dark.
Yeah. So this about wraps up him. We have seen them live once on the Project Revolution tour for the promotion for Venus Doom. They did put on a great show. There weren't a lot of visuals. It was mostly just the music. There were a few light effects here.
So yeah, you had mentioned that before. They don't do a lot of like pyrotechnics and no kind of big thing like that. It's they come out on stage and they perform the music. They don't want to detract from the music or the lyrics. I think they are a fabulous band, and if you've never checked them out, please use this as an impetus to do so. If you've only marginally experienced them, please, I hope that these podcasts have helped you delve a little more into it. Do you have something else?
Yeah. There is one more thing that a lot of people did want to point out, and I'm going to go back to their discography. A lot of people thought it was very interesting, the contrasts in their song titles. So in their album titles, like for example, we have Dark Light. And then we have deep shadows and brilliant highlights.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
So we have all this, and then, Venus Doom. Venus is the god of love, and Doom is
Doom.
Doom. Yes. So we have all that. So we hope you have enjoyed these. Are we going to announce the next band of the month?
Go ahead.
All right. The next band of the month for the month of March. We've been doing a lot of current bands. We decided we're going to do we're going to do a little bit of a shift to keep you guys guessing. Our band of the month for March is going to be the British alternative group The Cure. We're going to be diving into their discography, their lyric writing, their vocalizing, and we hope you will stay tuned for that. And I think that about wraps us up, and thank you so much for listening.
That wraps it up for us. As Devlin said, we do hope that you've enjoyed this little delve into him, and it's piqued your interest or solidified your interest for the Real CD Show. My name is Chamberlain Burke.
And I'm Devlin Burke.
We'll see you in March when we look at The Cure. Bye!